dedicated this hearing to be focused on the evidence of non-First Peoples, whose witnesses who will share their personal connection to Victorian's colonial past.
I mean, really, why wallow yet again in a past that's now 200 years stale? Who does that help? Then another commissioner, Sue Ann Hunter, welcomed Victorians to what she insisted was actually her tribe's land. She identifies as Aboriginal, you see, through her father's mother, one Aboriginal grandparent. And she finished with a neo-pagan prayer.
And may Bunjil watch over us as we conduct Aboriginal business.
May Bunjil look after us? Bunjil is the wedge-tailed eagle that the Wurundjeri, we're told, thought was the creator. But how widely held is that belief today? And I ask because, according to the 2016 census, most Aborigines are Christian. Just 2% believe in some Aboriginal religion. And most of those religions do not involve Bunjil the eagle. So I would have thought it made more sense and included more Aborigines if this truth-telling session had instead started with the Lord's Prayer, not the Bunjil one. And then came a white commissioner, Tony North, KC, with hair-raising tales of the horror of Victoria's history, that I've really no authoritative history myself. Now, whites hadn't just stolen the land, he said, but slaughtered Victoria's Aborigines.
20% of the original population was massacred.
In fact, he said, authorities concentrated Aborigines into reserves. You get concentrated concentration camps to be eliminated, like, this is Nazi stuff.
Parliament then passed laws to concentrate First Nations people into reserves where their lives were controlled in detail. These laws were designed to assist the elimination of First Nations people. The theft of land, the massacres which followed, and the legislation designed to eliminate the population of First Nation people are parts of the horror of our Victorian history.
The horrors of Victoria's history, elimination, get off it. And then followed 3 white Victorians to tell how awful their fellow whites had been, including an amateur historian who said locals in her part of Gippsland were now cross that she was campaigning to remove memorials to early settlers. She doesn't seem to be having much luck in her part of the world. Joining me on Culture Wars is Rowan Dean, editor-in-chief of The Spectator Australia and host of Outsiders on Sky News every Sunday at 9 a.m. Rowan, will the rest of Australia, looking at our first truth-telling commission, say, yes, that's exactly what my state needs as well?
Andrew, I think most Australians will be heaving a sigh of relief that we dodged a massive bullet by voting no to the Voice. Had the Voice gone ahead last year, it's nearly a year ago, the referendum, we would have had this sort of stuff at a federal level, and it would have been inescapable, and it would have had extraordinary, damaging, massive ramifications. The reality is that those hard left activists are going to push ahead with this stuff anyway, which is why we now have to, everyday Australians have to realise that it didn't stop with voting no to the Voice. We now have to vote no to things like welcome to country, acknowledgement of country. We have to say no to the Aboriginal flag flying off every harbour bridge or every building. We have to say no to this apartheid, to this, as you always call it, race-based division of the country into black and white, or black and non-black. It's so important now because we are seeing, once these commissions get up and they will have some kind of legal status behind them, they're talking about the horrors of the past. They're framing history from one perspective. Sure, there may have been horrors. I'm sure there were horrors. But the reality of this nation is it was legally founded from the very first moment. The first Brit stepped foot on this land. The papers he held in his hand said that the Indigenous population must be treated with respect, and anyone who harms them must be punished with the full weight of the law. So any nonsense about horrors and massacres and eliminations and concentration camps is so disingenuous, Andrew, because it's not based on the factual history. That's not to say it wouldn't have been dreadful things. There are all sorts of dreadful things happening in everybody's history. Look at any European history over the last 100 years. So the idea of sitting around and having truth-telling is such an Orwellian misnomer because they're not telling the truth. They're fabricating the truth, trying to give that truth some kind of legal basis, and God knows what horrors lie ahead if these characters are allowed to carry on down this path, Andrew.
Well, the three whites that they had before them today, saying how terrible whites were, they were happy to come. You wait, Rowan, soon you'll be compelled to come if this gets
Exactly.
further down the track. You know, and I just wonder, who on earth does any of this help? Because all I can see, it encourages people who've got resentment on their minds, division on their minds, or want an excuse not to get up and seize their future themselves. They just want to sit down and, you know, someone to throw them some compensation or money to get them through an easy life. I mean, I cannot see who on earth this helps. Can you?
Well, it doesn't help anyone. And it was Morgan Freeman, funnily enough, who back in the Obama years, when he was questioned during an interview, you know, what about race? What about black America versus white America? He said, the only racism is if you people in the media keep talking about it. Let's just shut up and get on with making productive lives. Most Australians have nothing but goodwill towards Indigenous Australia and want nothing but the best for them. And in fact, they prove that by the amount of money that goes every year to helping Indigenous Australia. Nobody wants anything but goodwill. No goodwill comes out of this sort of, oh, horror story, you're an evil person, you stuck my ancestors in concentration camp. All that does is drive hatred, resentment, and a search for some kind of punishment or guilt blaming. And as you said, how long before, you know, oh, your great-grandfather was on such and such a property, off you come down to the commission, we're going to punish you for whatever you supposedly did. And the reality is, Andrew, you know, I'm not an Indigenous historian, but there's plenty of people who've looked into the history of Indigenous Australia. Keith Windshuttle, others have written great books about it. And yes, of course, there were some terrible things, but the majority of it does not warrant the sort of hysteria that these sort of truth-telling left-wing activists are looking for.
And it's also, I simply don't see the point. It's about as pointless as me going to Germany and saying, look what you did to my family during World War II.
To the Dutch.
You know, how about it?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. What did you do for the Dutch? I think, Rowan, we've actually now reached peak Aboriginal activism of the left. You know, the guilt industry, the fetishising of traditional Aboriginal culture as now imagined. And I reckon that's because Australians are now seeing this being used to close down too many businesses that Aborigines rely on as well. In July, the Prime Minister personally banned the uranium mine in the Northern Territory. Now, Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek, she's effectively banned a $1 billion gold mine in New South Wales because of secret Aboriginal business that local traditional owners say is fake. And it's been pushed by people identifying as Aboriginal. Nice phrase that these days. If that's not bad enough for Rowan, Plibersek is now considering a new report telling her to use heritage laws to stop plans to mine and drill South Australians' Lake Torrens for copper, uranium and gold. Listen, do you sense around the country, including now many Aboriginal leaders, I talked to one on Monday, that enough is enough?
100%. By far, the majority of Indigenous Australians want prosperity, want jobs, want a good education for their kids, want opportunity. Economic opportunity comes from mining, comes from these various projects, and the sheer hypocrisy of the Albanese government, Tanya Plibersek, shutting down opportunities that would create Aboriginal jobs. And here's where you get this ghastly left-wing concept of intersectionality, Andrew, where by the left lump all these things in together and say, well, climate change, Albanese says, well, it's climate change that will help solve Indigenous Australians' problems. And this is so dangerous and so demeaning to Indigenous Australians who want nothing more than a fair crack of the whip and the chance to have a go. And, you know, seriously, if Albanese and Jim Chalmers think that we can be afford to afford to be turning down gold mines and platinum mines,
I know,
uranium mines. They
so
clearly haven't
true.
looked at the books, have they?
Bro, it's so
Yeah.
true. And today of all days too, because of the topic I'm about to discuss after the break. Rowan Dean, thank you so much for your time. And after the break, I'm going to be talking about these terrible growth figures for our economy. They are worse, dangerously worse than you are told. And like Rowan says, this is not the time to be closing gold mines.